Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. As the nation waits with bated breath for the verdict on who really won the 2019 Nigerian presidential election, let us now begin to set the stage by tracing our way back to the election itself and its peculiar circumstances, the back and forth that trailed the constitution and chairmanship of the tribunal, and the legal brickbats that have panned out over the past few months. To have a go at it, we are now being joined from our Abuja studio by Dr. Okey Ikechukwu, a leadership consultant, public affairs analyst, and executive director, Specs Development Academy. He's also a life coach and media consultant. Dr. Okey Ikechukwu, welcome to the morning show.
Good morning, Ruben. How are you?
Good morning. Good to have you on the program again.
And greetings to your team.
To Leila and Tundun.
Good morning, Dr.
Leila and Tundun, yes. Now, okay.
Good morning.
Yes, today is D-Day, yep. And, you know, Nigerians are waiting for the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal to decide one way or the other. But what are your expectations? What do you think may happen? And what do you think the parties involved in the case should do after the judgment has been given? I mean, your views, without necessarily prejudging the tribunal.
Well, I think what will happen is that one of the people before the tribunal will emerge victorious. I mean, if you're looking for prophecy, you can't fall that by prophecy, Ruben. So clearly, one of them will win. But you see, for me, there are three major issues here. The most important of all is that part of the process and instruments and mechanisms of democracy are in place here. So there was an election. Some people felt some aspects of the outcome were not good or were not acceptable and went to what you might call a body of competent jurisdiction to decide on it. So we're waiting for the outcome. To speculate on it, well, it's probably safe to begin to do that now. But we are going to hear the judgment in a matter of hours. I think the defense did its best. Of course, there are things we believe we could have done differently. I think the defendant, the petitioner, the complainant, the petitioner in this case, the petitioner. For me, it's for us to watch, and it's made more interesting by the fact that the petitioner is conjoined in the petition by a veteran petitioner, Peter Obi. If you recall, his mandate was stolen, he was unlawfully impeached, all sorts of things happened. He went on and on. Efforts were made to dissuade him. He was told, oh, why are you wasting money? Why are you bothering? The party wasn't even with him. He said, I believe in process, I believe in law, I believe in rule of law, I believe in the facts I have before me, and I'll keep going. So eventually, and if you recall, that his judgment has created incredible judicial precedents that's part of the foundation of the pillars of our democracy today. So the democracy is on trial, the judiciary too is on trial, and we're all waiting to see the outcome. For me, there's nothing to panic about. Whichever way it goes, it will be on record, it will be something to be built on, and the Nigerian state hopefully will benefit from it and grow.
Our hope. So the petition was premised on 6 grounds, but mainly hinged on this claim of the electronic server and transmission of results and the educational qualifications of President Muhammadu Buhari. APC and President Buhari have described the petition as a patent sham, completely dismissing it. But as we await the judgment this morning, what do you think that this whole process has added to our democratic process, and how has it enriched it, if at all it has?
Oh, it has. For one thing, if anybody is filing his papers tomorrow, the party will make sure that every relevant attachment is in place.
Dr. Ikechukwu, sorry, we lost you for a minute there. You were about to answer the question on how this process has enriched our democratic process.
Before I answer the question, let me add, since we were in the spirit of elections and the results, that my initial comments were inconclusive.
Okay, let's get the conclusive part now.
Let's have a rerun. Let's have a rerun of your comments.
You know. So anyway, yes, people will be more circumspect. But more importantly, I think it will induce people to take party activities a little more seriously. If you notice, both sides on both teams on either side, it didn't quite come across as a party engagement. One had expected, for instance, a massive rallying of both the petitioners, people, and that of the defendant. We didn't see too much of that. It looked like it was just Atiku and Peter and their lawyers. And you see, if anything, part of what has come out in this litigation is the limited maturity of the political parties themselves. And that is the second point to note. The other thing, of course, is that in terms of further lessons still, the judiciary was under severe pressure. If you recall about the chairmanship of the panel initially, I can say that it was masterfully handled. They could have insisted that the lady wouldn't go, and she could actually have argued in point of law. It is not criminal for me to occupy a position. I cannot just be thrown out of it. In fact, you're in advance impugning my integrity by suggesting that I'm incapable of impartiality. So, indifferent to, if you like, the rules of decency, the judiciary decided to let her excuse herself, or you prefer the expression recuse. I don't know why we like complicating our lives. You know, recuse. If you don't use recuse, then you've not said the right thing. Ruben, you're not a lawyer. I don't know what we have done to you people, but let me continue the point I'm making. You know. So the judiciary gave a good account of itself in that regard. And the processes were not seen, in my view, to be hamstrung. Most of the pleadings, most of the objections raised, it created an atmosphere that will create what you might call the image of a credible outcome. Acceptable is another matter. One is fairly confident that whichever way it goes, everybody walks away with something in this matter. Those who are prepared to represent petitioners in future have lessons to learn. The judiciary will prepare itself better. The wealth of evidence that, in fact, in the truckloads, you see, the parties will now begin to prime themselves for how to marshal issues. You will notice that those things, if much of the materials available were disaggregated in advance, for instance, these ones have to do with A, B, C, D. If you had disaggregated them, probably the flow would have been a little easier. But all things considered, it's been a good fight. All parties in the fight stood out. One was a little worried when the defense said it had nothing to say. It didn't sound too right. He gave the impression they are likely to rely on technicalities. And for some other people, he gave the impression they realize they have no case. All of that remains speculative. We'll get a substantive pronouncement today. And with that, we will know what next steps will be open to both the petitioner and the other party.
Very much so, Doctor. And what lessons do you also think an institution like INEC can learn through this entire process, and how can the people also feel towards INEC? A lot of people lost a lot of confidence around this entire election petition simply because of mainly the server issue that still people see in a very, very skeptical way. So how can an institution like INEC move forward after this to ensure that we're not put in this position again, where it's basically the people versus the existence of a server, and that is still the case till today?
Well, I'll begin by making a distinction between INEC as an institution and the circumstances under which it is trying to function. It's set up to give us credible and believable elections. Political pressures could sometimes interfere with that. Second point, INEC has consistently been learning lessons in the last 20 years. If you notice, it was under Jega, unlike what happened during option A4 and several other INEC chairmen before him, where schools were usually shut down during elections, particularly secondary and primary schools, and teachers were the electoral officers. The caliber of persons superintending elections were upgraded by INEC under Jega, and also the degree of, if you like, a tutoring for elections. Before, it would be just one evening, somebody will come and talk to the people, but now there's more elaborate. So INEC has been growing as an institution. Now, with this election, the mix-up between whether server was used or not, quite frankly, nobody needs to be told that INEC will not want to find itself in that kind of mess again. The judgment that will come from this petition will raise several issues. INEC, for now, can hide conveniently under the presumption of fact that the law actually does not recognize the server as instrument.
Okay, we need to take a short commercial break, and then we'll return to you, and you can continue. But of course, let me note that you were referring to Justice Xenophobia Ikechukwu, the president of the Court of Appeal, and I'm sure that the tribunal and all the other parties will note your commendation of the maturity she demonstrated. Let's take a short break now. You're still watching The Morning Show here on Arise News. And still with us in our Abuja studio is Dr. Okey Ikechukwu, a leadership consultant, public affairs analyst, and executive director, Specs Development Academy. Now, okay, before we went on break, you were saying a number of things before I asked you to hold your thoughts there. If you may just continue.
Yes, I was talking about the lessons.
Yes.
You know, parties will now prepare better for petitions, and the usual panic of expected partiality may come down a little. I think really, you know, pressures and tempers have come down while this petition lasted. Whichever way it goes, it wouldn't draw the kind of flag it would have drawn if it was concluded in a hurry. I think on all fronts, the democratic establishment is growing stronger. The judiciary is working. About Chikawa. I hope I didn't get the name wrong.
Justice
She exercised good judgment Bukachua, yes. Yeah, she exercised good judgment when she stepped down because the matter was way too sensitive. It's not like the kind of situation we had. You know, as a lecturer in the university, somebody very close to me took one of my courses, and I recall Professor Morebe called me into his office and said, well, doctor, you know, I don't want you to subject yourself to the emotional trauma of having to mark the script of somebody so close. Sorry?
Please carry on.
Am I still on?
Yes, we're with you.
Okay, yes. And so he said I should, what I should do is not mark the scripts, if possible, not take the course, since I'll have that emotional challenge of, how do I grade the scripts for somebody so close to me? I said, well, I said, Prof, you see, we're in the Department of Philosophy. This is the challenge of authenticity. This is also the challenge of credibility, even before the partner you're talking about. It's a struggle. You must prove what you're capable of and all of that. But in the situation where it's a major national challenge, creating a lot of concern about suspected interests of parties that are on the defense, her lordship, or his lordship as lawyers would say, exercise good judgment. Now, coming down to the party machinery, I think the other lessons they could learn is to see that petitions are not the businesses of the candidates who took part in the election, but that of the political parties themselves. That was not demonstrated, is one of the things we hope they will take. Also, in the course of the petition, if you recall, there was a documentary that AIT aired and was shut down probably because of it. I don't think that was an exercise in good judgment. I feared actually that it might lead to some more serious negative impact for the petitioner, because it was arguing everything before the court, and matters that were sub judice. Fortunately, that didn't happen, because if it happened, even if the judiciary was right, it would have been deemed a form of, the action of the government. So it's not looking too bad. I also think they could have been better engaged in the public space. Both parties could have also stimulated the political environment by continuous discussions and writings. There wasn't too much of that, but we're all getting the better for this.
Well,
in terms of democratic growth and maturity.
In a matter of minutes, the tribunal will begin its sitting. And as you said earlier, in a matter of hours, we will have an idea of the outcome of the petition. But let's talk about something else, which has been in the news in the meantime. The xenophobic attacks in South Africa. What are your thoughts on this? And, you know, about 300 Nigerians have been airlifted out of Johannesburg. I think they've arrived already. There are still about 40 Nigerians who have signed up to be evacuated. But it all looks so untidy that South Africa, a country, you know, that many Nigerians supported during the struggle against apartheid, has now become a difficult place for Nigerians who are either professionals or business people or ordinary persons seeking a livelihood in South Africa.
I think the South Africans have no problem with Nigerian professionals. They have no problem with the Nigerian government. They have no problem with Nigerians as a people, but they have problem with individuals who operate on the fringe of the law, sometimes outrightly outside the law and in criminality, and who turn out to be Nigerians. We need to insist on that distinction. Now, with their conduct and the growing hostility towards them, there has then emerged a kind of generalization. I mean, if you're a member of a family of 13 people, and 3 of your brothers or your cousins are always the ones making a nuisance of themselves in the village square, in the market, where the women go to fetch water, the family will get stigmatized. And if anyone, even the one who is a reverend father is passing, they'll say, yes, that's the people from that family, and they'll go and kill you. That's what we are seeing. So we make that distinction. Unfortunately, it's taken the form in which it has taken. And also the comments of some officials of the South African government have not been very helpful. It's a response hinged on economic discomfort and growing criminality. We must admit and realize that. As you are aware, when the whites left, there were entire neighborhoods that were abandoned. I recall our trip to South Africa. I think it was during the Sithengi Film Festival. There's a place called Lagos, I'm sure you know, in Johannesburg, Ruben. There's a place called Ojuelegba. And we went to, I think, Idumota. Look, you have a 21-story building that's totally abandoned, and everybody there is living illegitimately, and they are Nigerians. And you see, the whites left. It's like a place like Marina in Lagos, all of it evacuated immediately after independence. So you have neighborhoods that belong to nobody, but where people live, and all sorts of things go on. They claim also that some of the Nigerians on the fringe of morality also take advantage of the loophole in the law. So you now see that the majority of law-abiding Nigerians in that environment are unintentionally the victims of the misconduct of a few. And it's growing, and you can also imagine that, you know, as a people too, we are very robust, very active, very productive, and a contrast in temperament could also be enough to ignite certain things. I mean, whenever there's a riot in the north, it's the Igbo man who is killed. If the quarrel is between Jukuns and thieves, no Igbo store will be spared. Why? If you enter a beer parlor in Kano or anywhere, let's suppose you come in and you're drinking, and there are 30 people there, you will notice that those who are conversing most, if you like, let me not say rowdily, robustly, are likely to be people from the eastern part of the country. And it's not that they are bragging. Temperaments differ. You know, cultural backgrounds differ. And so if there's a preponderance of a certain way of doing things, you might be getting on the nerves of the people and they're looking for an excuse. You enter a market, probably in the middle belt or in the north, or even somewhere in the west. Every shop you enter, they're speaking Igbo. And it becomes part of what you live with. Without intending it, without thinking about it, something keeps growing. Especially the people you're talking about are so comfortable with themselves that they don't sound apologetic in living their lives. They may mean no ill, but there might be that abrasive, if you like, interface. So all of these have come together to create the unacceptable situation we have in South Africa.
Okay.
And evacuation is not the issue.
Maybe you need to clarify something before you talk about evacuation. Why do I think I get the impression that you are buying the narrative that this is all about criminality and the attitude of the Nigerian living in South Africa? I mean, this is the kind of profiling we got from the South African foreign minister and also from the defense minister, blaming the victim, you know, blaming Nigerians. Maybe you need to clarify that.
No, that's... Okay, I think I should. I should. The point, first of all, the major issue is the failure of law and order. Let's not deceive ourselves. if it's possible for you and I to go out on Lagos streets and beat up the people we think are criminals, then the law and order framework, government and governance has collapsed. So let's first admit the failure of the South African state to play its role. That you have some people who are misbehaving. Therefore, not only do you have a right to misbehave, but that you actually can do it and get away with it. So the profiling, no, I'm not pursuing it in that extreme sense. I'm saying that there might be some provocation related to the conduct of a few people, but because there is no clear intervention, there's no clear disincentive to misconduct, it grows. And so it begins to extend to professionals. You find a doctor being attacked, even by patients he had cured. No, that narrative cannot work, because if you go to the US, I mean, if you do the profiling, most of the people living in the US will be lined up and shot. It's not correct. It's a failure of the state. It's also a failure of...
Okay, Dr. Ikechukwu, I'm going to take you to another recent headline, in fact, today's headline, which says that 12 are feared dead. 12 Shiites of IMN, the proscribed group, are feared dead. And that is with relation to the proscription of IMN by the federal government. They were banned from observing their religious freedom to commemorate Ashura with Shiites all over the world. What is your take on the proscription of IMN, as well as the proscription of IPOB, which has now come back in the news headlines with this letter that IPOB has written to Southeast governors, stating their conditions for acceptance of Southeast governors' apology that was offered. But we have to take a short break at this point. When we come back, we'll take your answer, Dr. Ikechukwu. Please stay with us. Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. So we're waiting with bated breath for the judgment of the petition, the election tribunal.
As you can see on the screen there, you know, the tribunal is really getting set. What had been announced is that the sitting will begin at 9 o'clock.
Yes.
Well, we don't know how long the reading of the judgment will take, and whether or not the decision will be unanimous or it will be split. But definitely in a matter of hours, we will get the outcome, and we'll be in a better position to begin to discuss some of the fallouts.
Quick question. If the petition does not go in Atiku's favor, is he just going to go back to Dubai? Or what's going to happen? Because, I mean, that has become a home for him on the basis of his security, he claims.
Yes, which was bizarre. I mean, Dr. Ikechukwu said how Atiku and Peter Obi were the only two. But it was actually Peter Obi. Atiku was not really around, as it were.
Yeah.
But he does have the option to go to the Supreme Court if at all the judgment does not go his way. But I'm curious about whether we're going to hear a judgment on the merits or on technicalities. I'm really
a very good
looking
point.
forward to finding that out.
Absolutely.
But you know, Tundun Leila, there is a question some people have posed. Some people have said, well, should, you know, Atiku Abubakar and the PDP, should they have gone to the tribunal in the first place? Because if you look around, it will seem that in terms of public mood, many Nigerians have just moved on, and they are already looking towards 2023. And we had a guest here, you know, who said, look, from the way he has seen things, he didn't even think, you know, the petition was necessary in the first place.
Yeah.
But that, of course, flies in the face of the kind of thing Dr. Okey was saying earlier, that at least we've been able to learn some lessons.
Yes, we
and
have.
that this is good for the democratic process.
It has been good for the democratic process. I think this is an act that has really strengthened democracy, especially for a younger generation to see as well that maybe losing so much hope in the election process in Nigeria, whereby you know that even if something is clearly not free, fair, and credible in your face, you know that there is still the rule of law that can be upheld, and people can turn to that. It's very symbolic, I would put it that way.
Well, as we said earlier, let's keep our fingers crossed, and we'll continue to monitor what is going on in Abuja.
It all remains to be seen. But we're still with Dr. Okey Ikechukwu. Just before the break, I was asking you with regards to the proscription of IMN and the reports that 12 people have been killed. I was also asking for your thoughts on the proscription of IPOB and the recent letter that they wrote listing the IPOB, I call it IPOB, listing the conditions to accept the apology offered by the Southeast governors.
Well, beginning with IMN, the federal government did not proscribe IMN for the heck of it. There were reasons. If you remember, before the clash that led to the death of many members and the arrest and detention of their leader, they had been routinely operating as a state within Kaduna State, could block a section of the road. And that happened. The mayhem that followed was when a senior army officer and his team were blocked from crossing, from using what you might call a national freeway. So let's not forget that the circumstance, what led to all of this is also something that no sane government, civilian or military, will tolerate. It was a show of force, and one superior force overwhelmed the other. And also, the IMN does not accept actually the authority of the Nigerian state, its civil status and its military apparatus, and therefore contests the legitimacy of the government you and I and the nation you and I are talking about. Within the context of all of that, it will make sense for another force to say, no, we can't tolerate you in our space. Whether the process and the management of that is right, whether it should lead to loss of life, these are details one is not in a position to comment upon because I don't know the circumstance of the interface that led to actual loss of lives. Was it a shootout? Did they go to their houses and kill them? But the matter of proscription, no. Once you look into the details, the reaction of the government, even if we don't like it, is understandable for any government in power. You are not in power in order to be removed. And so you take certain measures. The only thing is, it is best you do within the law and from the angle of natural justice, equity, and good conscience. Yes. Now, concerning IPOB, well, its proscription, I think, was a bit precipitate. And in my view, the action was taken following a wrong reading of both the capacity, structure, profile, and stature of the organization. It was a provocative move because with it, IPOB assumed the larger-than-life attitude, which in real terms it actually did not possess. So they only helped the organization because when you look in terms of structures, in terms of process, in terms of sustainability, there are challenges up front. And you look at its interface with the Igbo elite, there are challenges too. Now, concerning a letter to the leaders giving conditions, that is not new. It will only, remember we had things like that also with MASOB. MASOB was actually the organization that prevented the census, the last national census, from taking place properly in the Southeast because they said they didn't want to be counted. The committee was set up. Some of us were in that committee, and we had gone to meet with some members of the leadership. Then this boy was in detention. But he came back clear the meetings we had with them. He said, listen, even if you're Biafra, there are a few things you need to do. Why not allow Nigeria to spend its money to count you so that we know how many we are, we Biafrans? That's one. Two, since we are not yet a republic, why not know your number so that when Nigeria is sharing this money that belongs to all of us, you'll be getting your due until you get your republic. Nobody listened to that. So you don't have a sustainable engagement template. You saw what happened to Ike Ekweremadu. And the other thing is that the absence of political education of the members. If they knew that Ekweremadu was involved in bailing Nnamdi and the rest of it, the action would have been this. So it's not really a movement that's structured progressively to grow. Instead, well, it will grow in terms of its nuisance value. Whether it can then progressively translate into a political movement that will lead, that will give structured and manageable leadership is another matter. So the letter now demanding apology or giving conditions to the Southeast governors, I think the Southeast governors, the onus is on them to demonstrate maturity. Even if you have a rascal as a child, don't keep calling him an idiot in the marketplace. Call a meeting. You even hear them. Whatever it is, that's how elders manage children who will one day realize that the world is not what they think it is. So call them together. But the mistake would be to appear to be ceding the power of the state, the instruments of the state, or the credibility of the political leadership to IPOB. That would be a grave mistake. Because the capacity for managing a group interest has not been demonstrated. That its ability to show that a lot of things are not going well for the Southeast, especially the youths. You must acknowledge that it's a good platform for driving political consciousness in that regard. That's another matter totally about leadership. The total ignorance of political economy of the Nigerian state and how to engage successfully. You can't come out with Tata shirts and trousers that doesn't have belt, and that's how you take over a government.
But what are your thoughts, Doctor, on the performance of the Southeast governors? What are your thoughts on the way in which they've been performing? Do you think they're going to be given the free upper hand that maybe they do need to enact proper sustainable developments, or what's your take?
No, to be given a free hand to do what?
To enact the proper changes that maybe they do need to enact for their states at this point.
Proper changes I'm trying to make out in regard to what, sorry?
We're speaking about all the issues with regards to IPOP that are going on right now, IPOB in the Southeast. How are you looking at the performance of the Southeast governors?
No, I think the governors should hold a dialogue with some of the leaders, talk sense into them. There was some experience we had. That was 1999. Then I was chairing the committee editorial board. Abraham Adesanya came to visit us. And I raised the question about OPC, that, look, these people are a nuisance. They are giving Yoruba people a bad name. As an elder like you, why would you be comfortable with this sort of thing? You know, Senator Adesanya said, my son, maybe because you're young, you know where Nigeria is going, but I don't at my age. These boys, I will talk with them in the night, but the next day they must go and make noise so that they know they can't just come and swallow us. Because I don't know where Nigeria is going at my age. And it will be unfortunate if it goes the way some of us fear, we have nobody to defend us around here. But when elders also have, you see, so you could see the strategy of dialogue in the evening, monitoring of what they do during the day. Now, the benefit of that is not available to the Southeast as we speak. So it's not good to just come and insult or demean Nnamdi in the public. He's also not tried that Nnamdi, for his age and everything, should carry on the way he's doing. He sees himself as an alternate, if not the de facto Igbo leader. By what standards? You know, those are the things. What they need to do is begin progressively to have conversations with small detachments of them and build enough traction to sit together and have a strategy on the engagement of the Southeast. Well, but for IPOB to see all political office holders as traitors, yep.
Yes, yeah, I wanted us to talk about something else, which is also topical. It's been about 100 days since, you know, governors assumed office or came back for a second term. And also the federal government, President Buhari's inauguration for a second term in office. Now, we've seen, you know, some reports about the performance of the governors in particular within the 100 days. What's your own assessment, particularly of the governors from the Southeast, where you hail from?
Anyway, I noticed that the one, since you're talking about the Southeast, the Abia State governor has set up 3 committees, one on them on salaries and pension payment, another on internal revenue, and I think the third one is on street lights and so many other things. And these are among the things recorded in the first 100 days. And I ask myself, you have a finance ministry. What is a committee on salaries and pensions doing? You have internal revenue office, I hope. Every state does have, I hope Abia has. What is a committee going to do on internal revenue? And then you have a ministry, if not of urban planning, then local government or whatever, and you're setting a committee on street lighting. You see, this whole 100 days thing has become a delusional engagement for most governors, 4 governors nearly across the country, with huge budget running into 1 or 2 billion for a bazaar that's totally unnecessary. In 100 days, you would have structured your government. Look, it was started by Delano Roosevelt of the US after the war, and his statement was, I will try within my constitutional duty to do everything that needs to be done to save a battered nation, I think, in the midst of a battered world. And in those days, he signed, within the first 100 days, he signed 76 bills, restructured a lot of things, imposed a bank holiday to prevent people from withdrawing until the banks collapse. So it is a period you sit down to work out strategy for running a government for 4 years. That you went and painted some streets, you've done empowerment, you gave money to some young people to start business. These gestures fall within what you call consumption, nothing more. And if you do a review of all the governors, most of the things being advertised actually fall within that.
Can I interject at this point, Dr. Ikechukwu? It shouldn't surprise you that we borrowed that leaf from FDR, because we do tend to copy the American system, whether it's relevant or it's not. We just copy everything quite blindly. But I wanted to take you back to Abia State and all these committees that you mentioned. I have to say that Abia State is one of the Abia State's governor, Piazza, is one of the 19 governors that has not inaugurated a cabinet, but he has inaugurated committees. What does that actually mean? Very quickly, sir, we're running out of time.
It doesn't mean anything. You set up commissioners and use the proper institutions of state to run government. People should stop deceiving themselves. It's as simple as that. Set up your commissioners. Don't keep multiplying. Is he not spending on the committees? What are the ministries doing? These delusional engagements have lasted long enough. 3 months, and you're talking about committees. What strategy are you going to bring electricity? I grew up in Omayamai, and there was water. Public tap, and in your houses you had water. Do you now have boreholes in the state?
Well, thank you very much.
Development is not expenditure.
Thank you very much, Dr. Okey Ikechukwu, for your thoughts and for your very engaging contributions. Thank you very much.